civilization is now the ultimate power in the universe.
A couple of extra buttons and I missed that cue. What is up, everybody? This is Ro from the Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast tonight. Saturday Scarif Live. Thank you everybody for joining us. We got a guest tonight that's going to help me break down a little Indiana Jones. Ambrose is geeky. What's happening, man?
Doing well. Always a pleasure to be on with you. So thanks for having me on yet again. Always enjoy these conversations.
Absolutely. Just nerds talking. Thank you everybody in the chat, Justin and Tina. I know you haven't seen the movie yet, so catch us later. Who else is in the chat? Megan, hello Megan. Good to see you. It is party time. And the Jedi of Chicago. Wanted to ask the Jedi of Chicago if you were over at NASCAR today. I just drove home from downtown and 17,000 steps. I work in media, so yeah, it's a lot of walking, but very exciting. The crowd was really cool. So hopefully Jedi of Chicago was downtown Chicago checking out the race cars. But enough of the race cars. Let's say hello to our guest tonight. Ambrose is geeky. Tell the folks a little bit about your guys' channel and what do you guys talk about over there?
We talk about a lot of the stuff you guys talk about, Ro. You know, we got Indiana Jones coming out, so that's going to be a topic of conversation probably next week for us because we try to avoid spoilers if we can and let everybody see the movie. But we like to, sorry, I don't know why I'm stuttering so much. We're fans writing for fans, and we keep all the filler out. We keep all the politics out. We like to have a good time and join people like yourself and just keep nerd culture alive and keep what it's really supposed to be about alive. And, just like I said, have a good time, discuss some Star Wars, some comics, maybe mix a couple other things in there if we're so inclined.
That is, that's pretty cool. That's one of the biggest reasons I love just kind of getting on the show and then bringing people in. You really said it. Keeping nerd culture alive. I think it's important. To, obviously, an escape for us. We work our butts, we work our scuttlebutts off, and sometimes we want to just kind of grab a beer and relax with friends.
And it gets kind of hard sometimes because the vocal minority is very vocal, and it's really hard to have a decent conversation without being shouted down, especially on like social media. So you kind of just have to. It's kind of hard to keep your composure sometimes and just stay the course. But we try our best to do it.
Yeah, especially when your data rate exceeds its limits.
Yeah, my review disappeared from Twitter. I mean, I have to, it's still on there, but I have to actively search for it. So I mean, I guess it was not offensive enough. I don't know. I'm a little perturbed with with the Musketeer on that one. So
yeah, interesting. So we have a couple of people in the chat that have already seen Dial of Destiny. I think Jedi of Chicago said he just got out of the theater, so that's kind of cool. Hello there, friend.
This is Frankie, my 3-year-old sidekick / daughter. She'll be joining me in and out for the next hour.
Excellent. I know Megan went to go see it. I think she went to go see it the same night I did. I saw it a little later because I do not sleep. And let's see.
I caught the 7:30 showing because I like to gauge what the crowd is going to be.
Yeah.
And, like Ty Cobb said when he was playing baseball, the crowd makes the ball game, and the same is for the movie. And you gotta step aside for a second, honey. And the crowd makes the ball game, and I was kind of disappointed at the turnout on preview night, to tell you the truth, on a 7:30 showing. We didn't have that many people in there in Annapolis. So
how many people do you think you had?
I'd say the theater was probably half full.
Wow, you had that. We had probably. Let's see. I went to go on Thursday. We did a 10:30 show. 10:30 at night, and there probably was around, I don't know, 12 people in the theater.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's because of the air quality index. A lot of people in Maryland are scared of that.
Yeah.
I don't know if a lot of people stayed home. I don't know if it's ramifications from the last movie, but there weren't as many people as I thought there would be.
Yeah, and I think so far it's only made $7 million.
Yeah, the Flash outpaced it, which is very surprising for me.
Yeah, well, the Flash has been out for longer than this, I think, hasn't
I
it?
mean, on the preview night numbers, the Flash
Oh, okay,
and
gotcha.
Flash and Little Mermaid outpaced it.
Yeah, yeah. Jedi of Chicago, where did you see your showing? He was saying that, or let me put that up. My theater was full up, though it was a smaller theater, like around 100 people. Yeah, that's cool. I'm always interested in, obviously gauging the audience, especially with movies like this. And for me, Alamo and Wrigleyville. I have yet to go to that place, but I almost wanted, I was almost going to have an event there. But that kind of fell through, but, I hear it's really cool. One of our buddies, CJ, I can't remember where he lives, but he was just, posting a couple of things. I think he's in New York, posting a couple of pictures about the Alamo in his neck of the woods. And, it's really a great place.
Yeah, we don't have one of those here. I'm hoping
Yeah.
Baltimore or DC gets one soon, but because I hear they're fantastic places to see movies.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of seeing movies, I want to ask you before we really get into breaking down the movie, how hyped were you when they made the announcement, first of all, that we are getting a new Indiana Jones, but then, a couple of months leading into the release date of June, how hyped were you about, wanting to see a new Indiana Jones?
I'm going to be completely honest. I was not very hyped at all. I felt I needed to see the movie out of an obligation to the series, more so than being excited that a movie was coming out. It was one of those things where it's been a big part, probably all of our childhood, so I felt like I needed to see it. But after 4, and with the addition of Phoebe Waller-Bridge, I was very, very wary and apprehensive about going into this movie.
Gotcha. Yeah, I always say for the most part, I'm the kind of guy that is, I like to think of things, glass half full kind of guy. Um, I, d- Indiana Jones, I think for me probably is, my second most favorite franchise. Obviously Star Wars, we got Indiana Jones. Um, so I was very excited when they announced that we are finally getting another Indiana Jones, and I really didn't have a problem, for the most part, on Crystal Skull. There were some things on there that, the first 4 movies, obviously the first 3 are great. Crystal Skull was probably at the bottom of my list, but there were still some things. I think there's more for me. There's more in Crystal Skull that I liked than I didn't like. I think one of the biggest things really is seeing Karen Allen back as Marion Ravenwood, and I don't know, just her joy. You can tell that she was happy to be there and happy to be back in the role with Harrison Ford, and it was kind of infectious. So I really enjoyed her contribution to the film. And like I said, I wasn't. I just watched it the other night, and I was okay with it.
I have a very complex relationship with Crystal Skull because it's one of those things where I kind of look at it like Godfather 3, where I don't think it's necessarily a bad movie. But being that it's in the franchise it's in, you have to stack it up to the other movies, and it kind of takes away from the experience of the movie.
Okay.
And that's kind of like my contentious. I don't think Crystal Skull, upon rewatch, when I first watched it, I hated it, and before I watched 5, I watched it again, and time kind of does heal all wounds, like you. It wasn't that bad.
Mhm.
The CGI was kind of goofy. The monkeys were kind of goofy.
Yeah, the gophers. There were 3D gophers.
I think they had a lot of the cutesy stuff. I think Shia LaBeouf, if he was supposed to be the heir apparent, that character could have been handled better.
Mm-hmm.
A
lot of people don't like him as an actor either, too. So that kind of contributed to the issues.
Well, I have this thing where I don't have to like you as a person, and I do like him as an actor. He has never really made anything that I inherently dislike.
Right.
As a person, he's stir fry crazy.
Yeah.
But if I didn't go see movies of half the actors I didn't like, I'd have one book and
Sure.
Cheers on DVD.
Right.
So, all right.
Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah, interesting. But so when did you see it? I think you saw it. You said you saw it earlier in the day.
I saw it the same night you did, but I caught the 7:30 showing.
Okay,
you caught the late showing.
Yeah.
Which I mean would have been 9:30 for me. So
sure. Yeah. All right, so let's do first impressions. Obviously we've only seen the movie once. I always have a group of friends that want to see it, but they want to see it at different times. They're, obviously their availability. So this gives me an opportunity to kind of tag along with my different friends and kind of watch it more than once. Right now, I just watched it once. But let's talk about first impressions. What were your first impressions? Not at the end of the movie, but what were your first impressions going in and watching the very beginning of the movie? Obviously, every Indiana Jones movie starts out kind of with a recap, or not really a recap, but like an earlier adventure. And this one obviously had an earlier adventure with young Indiana Jones. There's we'll talk about the CGI and aspects of how they did that. But what were your first reactions when you were watching that first part?
the first part, I was very satisfied with it. The deep fake was done very well. We'll discuss that later, as you said, but the action sequences, it really rang back to the old series. With there were some comedic elements, there were some thrilling elements. The villain was established early on, and it definitely seemed like James Mangold nailed it, where he wanted to start it like an Indiana Jones movie and really, really just hammer it home and get the audience into it. So I was really happy with the way the movie opened.
All right, let me ask you this, because what did you think of Mangold's directing, his style? Is there a style? And I'll give you an explanation as to why specifically I'm asking you this, but I wanted to get your take before my explanation.
Mangold's style, that was, and as we talk about the movie, I'll get more into it. That was one of the main problems I had with the movie. I didn't have as many problems as I thought I would have. I actually did enjoy the movie. I know I'm probably going to get hell on Twitter for saying that, but I'm fully prepared for the people to attack me. But I actually did enjoy the movie. But Mangold's style is different from Spielberg's in the sense that Mangold kind of likes to focus on the downtrodden. He likes to break his characters down before he builds them back up. Whereas Spielberg, when he made the movies, even with 4 and it had its flaws, he was really into the whole 1930s, 1940s action serial aspect of the series.
Yeah.
And Mangold was kind of going for the let's see what the human condition is. And I had mixed feelings about that.
So let me ask you this, because you mentioned that his style is, he focuses on the downtrodden. Do you think that that's his style, or is that somehow related to the culture at Lucasfilm for some reason? Because obviously that was one of the biggest reasons that a lot of people just did not like The Last Jedi, because Luke Skywalker was portrayed as a downtrodden, I give up and I'm grumpy and I'm going to go die on a hill somewhere. And a lot of people obviously were worried that they were going to do the same thing with the Indiana Jones. I don't feel that it happened as much as a lot of people were fearing it might. But again, as far as Mangold's style, do you think that's actually his style. And I can't remember what other movies he did. I know he did Logan, and yes, Logan was he was, you know, it was like the tail end of his career, and obviously we know what happened to the character. But what is your take on his specific style versus Spielberg? I know you talked a little bit about it, but I wanted to kind of tease out some more.
I think it was a stylistic choice that he was kind of strong armed into, and one of the few problems I had with the movie is you can tell with the editing what Mangold wanted to do as opposed to what the studio wanted him to do, because it really kind of it shifted from times to time. Like you had that action, we're chasing, we're having fun. Bad guys are getting punched, people are flying off cliffs in cars, and then you have 2 seconds later, it's like watching Axl Rose at the Garden. You know, Indiana Jones is in a corner, you know, like drowning in his sorrows. So I think behind the scenes, obviously I wasn't there on the set, but I think behind the scenes there was a little pushback on what he wanted to do with the character, and like you suggested in this question, what the studio wanted him to do, and it does show in the editing, because it is very push and pull with Indiana. It's almost like it's bipolar
Okay.
with the action sequences and then the dialogue after the action sequences take place.
Yeah. So Jedi of Chicago has an interesting point, and I forgot that Ford versus Ferrari, and I can't remember if I saw that movie. But the two main characters are people who had reached a peak and are chasing that peak again. I also want to ask you this, because I feel that, and it's not just a Lucasfilm problem. I feel that Hollywood has an issue or a problem with portraying characters that have been around for a while, but characters that that are older.
I believe they're
Obviously,
calling them. I think there's a like what are they calling them now? Legacy characters. I can't keep up with the lingo.
yes, legacy characters. So to me, I mean, it's interesting because, you know, you put an 80-year-old actor in the role that was originally played by, you know, someone 3 times as young. And you know, I guess you write a story where you kind of expect that actor to kind of be the same character as what we remember in the 80s with Indiana Jones. And sometimes I almost feel like the stories get to a point where the writers feel like there's absolutely no other way that they can portray this character as an elderly character other than just have him be miserable and grumpy because he's old. And now what? I don't know.
And yeah, you raise a really good point there. It's almost like now, if they were to make a biography on like Babe Ruth, they wouldn't focus on the heroics. They'd focus on him being like fat and on the Boston Braves and having to have someone run the base paths for him. And it is really, I don't know when this turn was taken.
Yeah.
It was taken obviously somewhere before The Last Jedi when Luke Skywalker appeared, but the reluctant curmudgeon has had a presence in the writers' room for a long time, and I think it's attributed a lot to egos. I think it's attributed a lot to young writers. It's kind of they don't shepherd the writers in anymore.
Right.
They don't have people passing the torch anymore, and it's almost like you have, you know, these young writers come in, and we are in a generation where we're so like everyone laughed at that Jennifer Lawrence interview where she said she was the first female action hero, and you know
Right.
clearly that wasn't true.
Yeah.
And we're in a generation of writers right now and filmmakers and storytellers where no one's really concerned on telling a good story. They're concerned on being the first, and
Mm.
they're concerned with making things like legacy characters a part of the past and doing their own. But I ask your question with another question. Wouldn't the Star Wars sequel trilogy have been better had Luke had a school of Jedi, and you could have your cake and eat it too, and you have Daisy Ridley take over for Luke, and then you have your strong feminine hero, and then you have your previous hero riding into the sunset on a good note?
Sure.
But that is something that would have happened in the 80s and 90s when people like Lawrence Kasdan were passing the pen to people that were taking over for them when they were hitting their twilight. And you don't have guys like that anymore consulting and saying, this is a mistake. You're not reading the character Bible. This isn't really the way we should go with it. And yeah, so that was a long rambling answer, but that was
no, but that's I mean, to me that's an interesting, that's an interesting dialogue between the and I'll use your term, the legacy writers in this case, versus new writers that come onto this, into this world, writing new blockbusters. I think there's a certain science to writing a good story, and I think I have seen a lot of elements in new movies that kind of ride outside the normal path of some of the rules that are used to kind of structure a good story. And a lot of people may not pick up on it consciously, but they pick on it subconsciously. There are certain elements in story writing that are so structured, that are built to satisfy the audience, when the story is complete. A lot of times nowadays you don't see a lot of that. People leave theaters unsatisfied for whatever reason, and it's a shame.
Well, and that also harkens back. There became a trendy, and this happened sometime in the last 5 years, where the fans are supposed to just like it.
Yeah,
you're not supposed to say what you wanted. You're not supposed to give an opinion. You're supposed to hand over your money, and you're supposed to like it. And
right.
and people are blaming the quote unquote entitled fans. And I'm sorry. I work for a living. Obviously, you see, I'm supporting one kid. I work for a living, and if you want my money, yeah, I'm entitled to a good experience.
Sure.
I'm entitled to, sit in my seat, eat my popcorn, and say, you know what? I had a really good time. If this person makes another movie, I will definitely go see that movie again.
Absolutely. Word of mouth. I think word of mouth is king. And I think, unfortunately, and we'll get to this, we are going to see a major drop next weekend as far as box office for this movie. But let's get into the first sequence. Was you said it. I think it was great. I think it was decent. One of the things which threw me out of it, though, and I don't know if you experienced the same thing. You mentioned that the deep fake, the de-aging was well done. For the most part, I think it's well done, but I think we're still 5 to 10 years out of a more photorealistic de-aging of characters that don't leave you kind of scratching your head. There's a thing called the uncanny valley where you realize you're looking at a face, but there's something not quite right about that face you're looking at. And obviously this happens when you are looking at a CGI, person, or a character that's not quite there.
Well, the Flash was kind of like a batting donut because those effects were so god awful. I went into this movie and I was like, these effects are great.
Yeah. One of the things that threw me off, and it wasn't the deep fake, because the de-aging, because I think it was we're getting there, baby steps. But one of the things that threw me out is the actor that they used to body double Harrison Ford, for me, did not have the young Harrison Ford body mannerisms. And I think it's a little nitpicky, but I think subconsciously I went deep into my soul and pulled something out. And that was the answer that I came up with. I was really trying to pay attention and lose myself in believing that this was young Indiana Jones, young Harrison Ford, but something about it just didn't add up to me. And what I came up with in my conclusion in my head was basically the actor was not, he wasn't right. I don't
and
know.
and yeah, I kind of felt that at the same time. Like even the way Indy runs, when he runs and he's holding his fedora and
Yeah.
you know he's running furiously. And this is where you can benefit from calling. You don't have to hand the movie over to them. But I think if Mangold had 100% control, which I really I'd be shocked if he had 100% control over this movie. I think if he had 100% control over his production, I think he would have called George Lucas or Steven Spielberg and said, "I'm having a little problem with this actor. The mannerisms aren't sitting quite right with me. Can you just give a look to the film, see what's going on, coach me a little bit, see what I'm doing wrong with the shooting, because it's just not something. I've got it like 95% there, and something is missing."
So
And
did you notice, did that bother you too, or did you notice that too, or?
it did bother me because it was almost like when you watch the old action movies when they first came out on DVD and you can clearly see the stunt double,
Right. Yeah.
like in Terminator 2 when Arnold Schwarzenegger's riding the motorcycle and you're like, that's clearly not Arnold Schwarzenegger. um, and I think with the technology today and the way things are shot and how you can vision, like the vision to the movie, I think they did an excellent choice masking it in the dark, because if they tried to shoot that in daylight, it would have, in my opinion, been disastrous.
Yeah.
But I do think that I was having, it was, oh yeah, it was like something isn't quite right about this.
Yeah. I
Like
think, you
like
said,
even the throwing the punch. I'm sorry to cut you off.
yeah,
Like
yeah, no,
even
no.
Indy has that distinct, like he holds your shirt and he has that distinct
Yeah.
like cock back and he throw, even the throwing the punch wasn't, and you could have called any fan in and been like, he's not throwing his punches correctly.
Right. Yeah. So I'm glad it wasn't me. And I'm glad, cause I try to go into movies with an open mind and absorb it and stuff like that. But yeah, there was something not right. And the term something not right for me applied to the entire movie. Um, there was something missing. And I think, James Mangold, as a decent director as he is, he's very plain. There's certain things that Spielberg does as a director that you can tell. It's like, oh, you can tell that this shot is Spielberg, or you can tell that this sequence is Scorsese. There are certain directors that you can really tell, by the placement of cameras, the composition of shots, that those directors are them. There was nothing in this movie that made me feel like, oh, this is kind of a Mangold thing. It was very plain. It was very vanilla.
It was, and I think what Spielberg was always able to do with any movie he made was he never, and very few directors can pull it off. George Lucas couldn't even pull it off when he directed his movies. He never had to pause the action to progress the story. He had this gift of keeping the action sequence and still being able to tell the story and unfold the story as the action sequence was moving forward. And as I was watching, that was another point of contention in my review. As I'm watching the movie, Mangold could not progress the story and keep the action at the same time. So there are a lot of points in the movie where I know what's going on, but I don't. There's
Yeah.
characters that don't make sense.
Yes.
He crammed a lot of characters into this movie, and
Yeah.
like the African American lady that was the undercover agent. I mean, she did a good enough job acting. I didn't hate the character,
Right.
but she really served at the end of her tenure in the film. When she exited the story, she served no purpose. Like the whole time she was on screen, I was just kind of like, who is this lady and why is she here? She clearly doesn't agree with the villain, but she's still kind of after Dr. Jones.
Right.
And there's no clear reason as to what her purpose is for this movie.
Yeah.
Like,
I didn't know who she was. I didn't know who the guy in the crutches was. If obviously the African American character, she wasn't a Nazi, she was an American, but why were they helping the Nazis? I just didn't get what connection there was.
and as the movie went on, it kind of clicked in my head because I do read a lot about World War II, but and I'm not putting down the average viewer, but the average viewer doesn't know about Operation Paperclip.
Oh yeah.
And it's clearly an illusion. Like, Mads Mikkelsen's character was bought over on Operation Paperclip. These were his handlers. But, the average viewer, the average person has no idea what Operation Paperclip is. You have to be an avid reader and
Historian.
historian
Yeah.
and to know what that is and what the significance of that was to this country. And so I think it left a lot of viewers like, who are these people? Why are they here? And why do I care?
Right. And I
Right.
think again, getting back to the style, the directorial style of James Mangold, that is one thing and one aspect of the story that should have been conveyed. The Jedi of Chicago here. Bingo, that was the idea, but it wasn't conveyed at all. Um I think this film had a lot of threads that if you're going in to see an Indiana Jones movie, you kind of accept at face value. But I think it would have been a lot better if some of those points were hinted at, if some of those ideas were conveyed, because I think it would have tied in the narrative a little better, and it would have been worth hearing all of that stuff. That is one of them, and I think to kind of cut ahead, the obviously the MacGuffin, the idea of this dial of destiny, was basically that it predicted these time rifts, so they were able to go to a time rift and go, back in time. And we, for those of us who saw the movie, we understand what happened after that. But I think it was a huge leap to believe that this was the case. And I think one of the things that would have been able to fix that leap of faith, especially in just regular audiences that may not have a clue as to why this is a time travel movie in Indiana Jones, is they should have mentioned the Bermuda Triangle or something like that, where somebody says, there must be a reason for these airplanes to be disappearing, off the coast of Florida for some reason, just to kind of get the idea of, once we get to a time travel and the plane goes backwards in time, we kind of get an idea of, oh, okay, that kind of helps explain that. But
Yeah,
again, nothing was conveyed.
there's usually in every Indiana Jones movie, there's usually some sort of reveal
Yeah.
where you'd be him and Helena Shaw would be in some sort of archive and they'd be doing some sort of research trying to figure out what's going on, and then whatever it may be, that is when like the African American lady that nobody knew her purpose would have come in and said, well, this is all because of Operation Paperclip. This is what Jurgen Voller is really planning. And then the story would have congealed and
Right.
Indiana Jones would like, damn Nazis. And then, it would have actually explained. And they didn't have that signature kind of reveal that always pops up in the Indiana Jones movie. They went more for the action and less for the historical significance of what they were trying to focus on. And and I think it was they crammed way too much into the pot to actually have that moment.
Yeah.
Like Antonio Banderas was clearly meant to be like the new Sala,
Right.
but he had a total of 90 seconds of screen time. Half of it was underwater and CGI.
Yeah.
So it's like, it was they less would have definitely been more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to Jedi of Chicago's point, if you remember the trailer when it first came out, obviously as nerds, we pick apart each frame, and there was one shot of Indiana Jones in the classroom, and there was a diagram on the projection screen. Everybody zoomed into it, and people were talking about that must be the Nazi bell, which obviously gave credence to the fact that this might have to do with time travel. And a lot of people are like, "Oh, Indiana Jones time travel? No, that can't be." But they had it set up right there, but they just didn't. They decided not to go with it. That's interesting. One of the things that really surprised me, and as two-dimensional as the bad guys were in this movie, they did end up killing a lot of people. You mentioned Antonio Banderas. One, I forgot he was in it. So when they went to him,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, that's right. He's in this. I thought he would last longer, but he didn't. I think the Nazi bad guys were trigger happy, and they killed a lot of people,
Which is uncharacteristic in itself of the franchise.
Yeah,
The more I thought about that.
sure. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, again, there's just a lot of little things for me in the movie that just kind of took me out of it. Let me ask you, let's get into characters. Helena, what did you think of Helena when we first saw her?
Honestly, as someone who detests Phoebe Waller-Bridge, like, I really, up to this movie, could not stand anything she touched, and I was actually pleasantly surprised with the character. I thought we were going to get a smarmy, snarky, know-it-all,
Right.
replacement for Indiana Jones that was going to make him take the back seat in his own movie, and it was going to be her show. And I was impressed with the restraint they had with Phoebe Waller-Bridge, considering the role she's played in other movies.
Yeah.
The problem I had with the character had nothing to do with Phoebe Waller-Bridge herself. You had her starting off as kind of a grifter / protagonist. Then you have her as a femme fatale. Then you have her as an ally. Then you have her as this is another thing where I think the production Mangold didn't have 100% control, because I think production was all over the place on how they wanted to portray this character, because it's like, what exactly is this lady? I like the fact they didn't make her a Mary Sue. It was clear she was trained at a very young age to know what she knew.
Sure.
And that was explained. And I really did like the fact that, again, that she didn't come in and just chew the scenery up. But the writing of the character was all over the place. And if she's going to be a huckster, make her a huckster. If she's going to be a femme fatale, make her a femme fatale. So it was kind of like a fractured character, and I didn't really know what quite to make of her.
Yeah, I was still unclear as to what her motivation was. I mean, her father died in a way that you can tell that she kind of regretted, or I don't know, did she blame Indy for that, or she blamed somebody for losing her father at a young age, and she just she reverted to being a grave robber and selling these trinkets on the black market. But I don't know how true that would be to a character that loved her father so much, unless I'm reading into it. I don't know.
No, I don't think you're reading into it, because that was the same problem I had, is that you're going after this artifact that you're obsessed with, that clearly, as the story goes on, killed your father.
Right. And your father was obsessed over it.
And your father was obsessed over it. But then the next thing, it's like you don't give a crap about it, and you're selling it off at auction to pay for bail money.
Right.
And it was very, like I said, fractured in the sense, I don't know if the writers themselves knew where they were going with her, and it's almost like they made it up as they went along.
Yeah, it's yeah, it was a little weird. And you did kind of start to see a change in her. I think I had stepped away to use the restroom in the middle of the movie, and I came back right when Indiana Jones was explaining to her about Mutt. And I did hear, obviously, the fact that they mentioned Mutt and what his fate was off screen, and the result of the loss of Indy and Marion's son was basically what drove them apart. And, I was having a discussion about this with a friend of mine, and they didn't think it was realistic. And I'm like, you know what, though? If a married couple loses a child, it does kind of put a strain on that relationship. I don't see it as unrealistic. It's interesting that they introduced that aspect just to kind of separate them. I almost feel like they did that as a plot device to bring them back at the end of the scene, instead of maybe having them together throughout the movie, which I feel might have been a little better, because it shows you that their relationship is still strong. And again, this goes back to, how can we deconstruct a character / relationship to kind of build it back up at the end of my movie?
I wasn't a fan of that, addition to the storyline. I think it was kind of out of place for an Indiana Jones movie where, like he's got the dead son. You're going to make him sad. I mean, I think it was a good scene. I think it was a well shot scene. I just think I don't think it was, I don't know. I just wasn't a fan. Again, a lot that went on with this movie. It didn't sit right, but it did bring an appreciation to why the character was forlorn, as opposed to the sequel trilogy in Star Wars, where Luke is just like, I'm an angry old man and I'm drinking, space cow milk and I hate you and I'm throwing my lightsaber away. And there's no real and I almost killed my nephew. And, so there at least was an attempt at an explanation as to why he was a broken man.
Yeah. And I think I accept that explanation more so than whatever Luke was doing on an island by himself.
So I mean, if I was making the movie, I would have left that aspect out. I think it was trying to pull at the heartstrings. I think it would have been much better for the development of the story if he said he would go back in time and stop Helena's father from obsessing over the dial so much. I think that would have brought them closer together as a team.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I didn't hate the scene. I just wasn't a fan of it, if that makes sense.
Sure. Let's talk a little bit about practical stuff. Computer generated images, CGI. Obviously, a movie like this cannot be done without CGI, but do you think they overdid it, or do you think there's a good balance here? What are your thoughts on CGI in this movie?
I think there's a decent balance. Mangold puts together a really good chase scene. So I'm glad the chase scenes were authentic, or as authentic as they could be. I think chase scenes went on way too long. I think the movie the movie itself ended up being like a 100-minute chase scene, which was very exhausting as a viewer. But as far as the CGI goes, I was kind of disappointed because they did a decent job with the deep fake and the beginning with the train, not Indy's mannerisms or the problem we had with that, but the beginning with the train scene and the explosions and the fights. Those were masterfully done from an effects point of view, in my opinion. If you think I'm wrong, please announce that in the comments. I'd be happy to discuss that. But there were parts in the movie where they started with that, and then there were green screen effects where it was like, this was clearly a reshoot and they ran out of money. Like some of the scenes with the plane flying, so some of the panoramic scenes, some of the scenes like when the kid is in the water, it rang false, and there was a real sense of inauthenticity to the effects there.
Yeah. So I had a big problem with the when Indiana Jones escapes on a horse on the streets of New York and goes into the subway.
Yes.
There was a lot of ticker tape on that street. Too much. didn't look real. The CGI just looked really bad. Obviously the horse on the subway looked kind of goofy, but yeah, you're right. I think a lot of the chase scenes really lasted longer than they should. Although I think my favorite chase scene, and still it was longer than it should have been, was in Tangiers on that little rickshaw type of
Yeah,
little
the what's it
cart.
called? I joked to my friend that I was going to substitute the mod in my '95 Oldsmobile for those cars
Yeah,
when the
but I
movie came out on DVD.
yeah, but I did
Um,
like that chase. I think
uh,
it was kind of thrilling. It was exciting. It wasn't, obviously it's, Indiana Jones is like a James Bond movie with their chases and their adventures and stuff like that. So it was a little over the top, but not over the top where I just absolutely could not believe it. So I like that. Tuk-tuks.
it was a good
Yeah.
yes, tuk-tuks. It was a good chase overall, but again, that's something that would have benefited from less is more. Where they're chasing the Nazis, and then what was it like? Her ex-boyfriend shows up or something like, and he's got a sword. All of a sudden, it's like, all right, now who the hell
Oh
is this
yeah,
guy?
yeah. That was
Why is
the
he involved?
yeah,
And then he's gone. Like there's
yeah,
no like
yeah.
there's
I
no
think that it's funny.
explanation.
It's like they threw in this new character just to kind of steer the story in a weird direction. I also wanted to ask you, because I asked my friends about this. So in the middle of the movie, when they go to their final destination, the Nazis capture the kid. They kidnap the kid.
Yeah,
Why?
I think because he knew the location, and they didn't know exactly where they were going, and the kid did.
Oh, okay.
The kid annoyed me. I think the kid was a huge miss in the movie.
People are saying that he would be the new short round. The kid didn't bother me actually.
I just thought it was, even the story she told how she met him. It was like, okay, this is clearly an answer to Short Round. And I understand why they did it. I just don't, and I don't like to rag on child actors, so I'm not going to get too much into it. I mean, they're kids. I don't like
Damn
to.
you
I don't like
kids.
to. I don't like to be that guy. But the kid didn't really have the charisma that Short Round or even little Anakin Skywalker did. He was just kind of there. He wasn't really a smart ass. He didn't talk that much. All of a sudden, he knew how to fly a plane.
Well, he was practicing when we first saw him. He was practicing with some of the British pilots. He had made a mock control area, and then they were kind of coaching him. So I kind of accepted that. Now he's kind of familiar with the controls.
I felt bad for that dude who was in the back of that plane.
Yeah,
Like you
was just
take a
having
nap
to
and all of a sudden you're waking up. Centurions are shooting at you. But I mean, I thought the character was a miss. What I really would have liked to see, as opposed to as opposed to a new version of Short Round, what I really would have liked to have seen is for Sala to have come along. I think Sala was so. Come on, lady. I think Sala was so important to that franchise, to just have him be kind of a footnote.
Yeah,
was kind of a disservice to the character, given the role he played in Raiders and especially the role he played in Last Crusade. And if this is truly the last Indy movie, I mean, as a fan, I would have wanted Sala on that ride. Given that he's the last legacy character alive. I mean, Connery's dead, Brody's dead. There weren't that many, and like we discussed in the last time I appeared, Short Round, his fame resurged a little bit too late for him to be reintroduced into the movie.
Yeah.
So I really would have liked to see Sala in the movie as opposed to in the beginning and the end.
Yeah, Jedi of Chicago's got a good point. If Sala had replaced Antonio Banderas, that would have worked better, and it would have made sense.
Yeah, I mean, Antonio Banderas is an old friend. There was from where?
Exactly. Yeah. And we're not totally unreasonable. We know that Indiana Jones had other adventures that we just didn't happen to see. But Yeah, it would have been nice to kind of tie it together.
Well, and also if they were bringing things around full circle, when he said, "I know a guy, he's a sailor," I thought it was going to be the guy from Raiders of the Lost Ark. I forgot the character's name.
Oh,
Where Indy was hiding on his ship.
Captain Tunga.
Yeah, I would have like if it was Captain Tunga, I would have gone nuts.
I was expecting that to be, and I'm like, oh, that would have been cool. And then that's when I forgot. Oh, that's right, Antonio Banderas is in this movie.
Like if Antonio Banderas was there with Captain Tunga,
yeah,
like
that would have been good. Yeah,
I mean, I thought.
And by the way, I'm not sure if that's his name. I just made it up. But
Captain Tunga sounds yeah, I forgot. I forgot his
too.
name. So.
So again, spoilerific on this show. I wanted to let's just cut to the chase. The MacGuffin of this film, the actual dial of destiny. All right, so they put the two halves together. They did a little math. They turned some dials, and they got into the plane and headed to the location of the time fisher. And obviously, their goal was to go back in time and make sure that actually they were going to kill Hitler, right? And then he was going to take power.
I believe he was going to. Assassinate Hitler and take power, and I'm pretty sure that there were like 4 or 5 people ahead of him that would have that would have said no. Like, pretty sure, like, you know, Himmler and Goring would have been like, "We don't know who you are, dude," and now we're gonna hang you. Like so.
Justin, we're going to answer your question in about 5 minutes, but I wanted to ask you. What did you think of the plot device, the dial of destiny? Do you think that time travel fit? What's your take on this?
I mean, given that we're in a series where, you know, we have artifacts, you can't say time travel doesn't fit when in Last Crusade, he's healing his dad with the Holy Grail.
Right, yeah.
And you know, in Raiders of the Lost Ark, the Angels of Death came out and eliminated the Nazi Party. So, I mean, you can't really say that time travel is out of the realm of possibility. I did like how they accounted for the continental drift and the change in mathematics. So I when that popped up, I was like, oh, something's going to happen. And then, you know, they thought they were dragons. And they thought they were, and so I was so I think the time travel worked. I think the marketing of the movie really could have benefited from not emphasizing the time travel, since it really was not a big part of the movie.
Right.
Like it was kind of like the end, and I kind of was happy for Indiana Jones, because as an archaeologist who studies all this stuff, to see the look on his face when he's actually looking at the siege of Syracuse, and he's saying, like, I've only written and read about this stuff, and I'm seeing it in real life, and he's amazed to be watching something that he was so, you know, in love with for his whole life, seeing it in person.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a really nice touch. But I think the marketing of the movie did the movie a disservice by making you think like that it was going to be all about time travel. And I think ultimately that's going to hit the movie at the box office hard.
Yeah. And, you know, again, I was talking to some friends about it. I don't think so. Each Indiana Jones movies had a certain relic that was based in reality. I think the tail end, the explanation of that relic, was where they obviously embellished a little bit. You know, the even in Crystal Skull, you know, we were talking about interdimensional aliens or beings or whatever, but the you know, I'm a big fan of that show Ancient Aliens, which kind of has a lot of that those concepts in where, you know, ancient cultures were taught all this stuff by beings from outer space and all that stuff. And I find that interesting. And Crystal Skull definitely kind of played around with that concept. But yeah, I didn't hate the time travel aspect too much. I do remember kind of rolling my eyes a little bit of it, because I'm thinking, wow, they pulled the plug on, or they pulled the trigger on this time travel thing. And I remember, leaked images of Roman centurions and people thinking, well, how the hell are Roman centurions going to fit into this movie? And people started talking about time travel, so I was like, oh no, time travel, I don't know about that.
Well, the one that threw me off is you see all these commercials, and you see there's clearly a scene in one of the trailers where Phoebe Waller-Bridge is stopping a boulder with a plank, and I'm sitting there watching. And I'm like, don't tell me they go back to Raiders and she figures out a way to stop the boulder. I am going to
Yeah,
I will set this theater on fire. I will burn this place down.
Yeah,
If you retcon Raiders. So I think they didn't market this movie very well. So
yeah. Overall, I think let's go ahead and answer Justin's question. Is this movie good or not? God, we've been talking for about an hour, and I'm still on the fence whether the movie is good or not. I want to say, for me, there are a lot of little things that aggregate to a not so much fun experience at the movie theater. But you know what? Let me I'll let you answer first for the most part. Do you think that this movie was good or not?
I think the movie is very flawed. I would like to see a director's cut if they let Mangold ever do that. Like you said, it's a tricky question because I didn't hate it. And I will give a little preamble by saying I went into this movie looking for reasons to hate it.
Sure.
And I didn't end up hating it. I actually did find it to be an enjoyable theatrical experience. I don't think the movie itself was a masterpiece. How does it stack up to the other 4 movies? I'd say it's better than Crystal Skull in some respects. I say technically Crystal Skull is better than it in other respects. From a sentimental point of view and as a fan of the series, I think the send-off for the character is good. And I think that Mangold handled the send-off very well. And that's how I'll say it. What I didn't like about it, and then I'll turn it over to Ro, is at times, and especially it's evident after the comments made by Kathleen Kennedy about moving forward with the franchise. At times, even though Phoebe Waller-Bridge was muted and her role was, an enjoyable role in the movie, it did feel like a backdoor pilot. It did feel like, okay, we're going to see the reception of this character, and we're going to see if she's viable, and we're going to see if she can carry on with the series.
Yeah.
But as a send-off, it was great. As a movie, I would say I have mixed feelings about it.
Okay, so I'm with you on that one. I think if I had to choose whether it was a good movie or not a good movie, unfortunately, I would have to choose not a good movie. It's definitely for me, Crystal Skull is way better. It's as obviously it had its problems, but I think Crystal Skull was structured a lot better.
From a technical point of view, I'd have to agree with you on that.
Yeah.
Just because Spielberg knew the character and handled the character and the progression of the story better.
Obviously, and George Lucas still was part of the equation there. But it's funny because I think some of the things that for me were missing was a certain Spielberg touch. There are certain things in a Spielberg movie that you expect, especially when it comes to Indiana Jones. And I didn't see a lot of that in this movie.
I think that there could. I just think there. It's one of those things where it's like you're watching it and you're not hating it, and you're enjoying it, and it's almost like you're playing hot and cold, and it's like you're getting warmer, you're almost there, and then the movie ends, and you're like, oh, you didn't reach it.
Yeah.
You didn't get there. You almost had it. You almost had a complete movie.
And that's how I felt when I watched the ending. The way they ended that, it was very truncated. It was, Marion shows up, and then the Warner Brothers, what do you call it? They ended it just like the end of season 3 of Mandalorian with the circle wipe. And it was like, that's all, folks.
Yeah, I was waiting for Porky Pig to come out.
Yeah.
So I mean, I was not a fan of that. Like, how are you gonna make my boy Sala? You bought him over. The guy helped you through all these things. You couldn't get him a better job than being a cab driver.
Yeah.
Then the guy shows up at the end of the movie, and it's like, go get ice cream, Sala.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, there are certain things that Mangold did kind of include for the fans. I mean, that scene in particular, when Sala was going down the stairs with the kids, and they wanted obviously Marion and Indiana Jones to be alone. You can hear him singing the song to the kids, the song that he, I forgot the name of the song, but it's the song from Raiders of the Lost Ark when Marion gives him a kiss on the rooftops of Egypt.
Yeah.
But listen for that if you guys are gonna hit the theaters again. How many Wilhelm screams did you hear?
Too many to count.
Yeah, I think I stopped counting at 1. I heard the 1, and I think I was just satisfied. I'm like, okay, cool, there it is. I'm done.
I think the villains weren't fleshed out. The main question I had was, and correct me if I'm wrong, didn't Voller get hit by a mail post or something on the train and get knocked off the train?
Yeah.
He just shows back up. He doesn't have an eye patch or a hook for an arm or anything.
Not even a Band-Aid.
He took that hit like a champ.
Yeah.
I was like, this guy's not deformed in any way. You hit 1940s steel at a high pace and you survived. I'd expect you to have a little bit of damage there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Jedi of Chicago kind of summed it up for us. Way less time than our 1-hour discussion. It had all the ingredients for sure, but it didn't nail the cake in the end. It was very truncated. The one thing that I will say for sure, and again, I usually don't want to be that guy. And there is, there's a terminology where a lot of people say, well, this movie didn't need to be made. This movie didn't need to be made. And I hate when people say that. But honestly, I'm going to get hate for this. I don't think this movie needed to be made. I think the first 3 films were so perfect. And okay, Crystal Skull, it is what it is. But I think the ending where Indy and Sala and his dad ride off into the sunset was a perfect ending.
It was the best ending to a trilogy.
Yeah.
It was the best ending to a story in the history of at least the second half of the century of the 20th century of movies.
Absolutely.
You had 3 of the greatest actors on screen riding off into the sunset, and Sala, who's a great actor in his own right. And did the movie need to be made? Probably not. Am I upset that it was made?
Right. No,
but I think the problem with the reception of the movie is, like myself, I think so many people went into this movie ready to hate it and looking to nitpick and looking to hate every aspect of this movie that I don't think, and I think we made a lot of fair points about the movie as to why it doesn't stack up very well, but I don't think it's going to get a fair shake with a lot of critics just because you're going into something you already hate. And you're going into something that you're going to willingly look for things to point out, and you're not going to give the movie a fair shot.
Sure.
So my advice to anyone watching this that hasn't seen it yet, watch the movie for yourself. Am I upset that I watched it? I am absolutely not upset that I went to see this movie in the theaters. I have mixed feelings about it. You can read my review on the website. I thought it was a good send off, but it was very flawed. But yeah, I don't think it's going to get a fair shake, because even a lot of YouTubers that I respect and I watch for opinion, like Critical Drinker and like Nerdrotic, I'm watching and I'm like, these guys did not give this movie a fair chance. They didn't, and I usually respect the points of view, and I still respect the points of view of everyone that has something to say about it, but I just don't think there was. I think the cards were stacked against the movie the minute it was set for release.
Hello. Yeah. And again, I go into a movie theater wanting to love the movie. I mean, look at my background. I'm wearing a damn Lucasfilm Limited T-shirt, so
yeah.
I want to be able to talk about stuff that I love. And again, yes, I think I would echo what you said. Go out and see the movie, make your own opinion. If you don't want to spend full price, $5 Tuesdays is the thing. So
oh yeah,
go check it out.
But yeah, my final verdict is it's mixed, not great. Treatment of the characters was better than the movie itself, is the best way I can probably put it.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. I think that does it. Any other final thoughts on Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny before we take off?
Like I said, I'd really look forward, because the way the editing was very choppy, and I'd like to see if Disney and Lucasfilm give Mangold the opportunity to do a director's cut and see if we can get his actual vision for the film, because I feel like and this is a running theme in this conversation, there were things missing. And I feel like if they give him a chance to put the movie together the way he wanted to, without the studio putting him in the right direction, I think we might get a better result. So
yeah, I might have to push back a little bit on that. I don't think Mangold is the type of director that needs to be controlled by the studio. I think and again, he's not a great director. He hasn't done anything that like wowed me or given me Steven Spielberg, feelings. I just think he's a decent director. He knows what he's doing, but there's no pizzazz, there's no spice in his style and his writing.
He's a cheese pizza.
Basically, yeah. From the dollar store.
And that's a lot of, and that goes back, and that's a lot of the modern filmmakers today, except for you have your Tarantinos and your Christopher Nolans, but
right.
A lot of filmmakers are not, like you've been saying, you're hammering that home, and it's a very good point. They don't have that thing, like it's not a James Mangold movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
All right, my friend. Well, this has been a great discussion. Thank you very much again for coming on, and thank everybody in the chat. If you have seen it, let us know what you think. If you're going to see it, I know some of you guys are going to see it next weekend. So come back, hit us up on Twitter and let us know what you feel, what you think about it when you see it. And I don't know if you guys agree with our takes on this one, hit us up on Twitter as well. Why don't you tell the fine folks where people can find you guys?
Yeah, if you want a fair review of this movie, I called it, I did a good, bad, and ugly review, good points of the movie, bad points of the movie, and what was downright ugly about it. And you can find that on my Twitter site. Actually, it's kind of like wonky to search for on Twitter, so just go to geeknewsnow.net, and it's up there if you want an unbiased and general opinion without any spoilers. That would be a good place to go. You can follow me on Twitter at GNN_home. That's where me and Miss Debbie usually do most of our tweets. And you can follow us on YouTube at, we have a new YouTube address. I got to plug that. We are at Geek News Now Official now. The old channel was a little bit of a hot mess. So we retooled the channel. We built it from the ground up, and we are now Geek News Now Official. Check us out there. Have a lot of good programming. I'll be on there later on tonight at 10. Of course, if you're not watching Scarif, you can catch us on the repeat on the Geek News Gauntlet. And if you're not doing anything, you're welcome to appear on with us. So yeah, that's what we're doing. And check the review out. It's spoiler free. And I'd love to know, and leave a comment on the review. I'd love to know what you guys think. So.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining me on this edition of the Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast, Scarif Live edition. If you guys are still in the chat, head on over to Pop My Culture and help Shanti and Josh celebrate 1 year of their show. Until next time, this is Ro. We will see you guys later. And that's the Scuttlebutt.